With the opening prayer, Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of the Colac Otway Shire. Enable this council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. Amen. I'd like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders past and present, and welcome any descendants here today. Please be advised that this Submissions Committee meeting is recorded and live streamed, with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of meetings. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in open committee meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal and/or sensitive information. The purpose of this Submissions Committee meeting is to hear persons who indicated they wish to speak in support of their written submission to the Hall Street Cressy Part Road closure. All 7 councillors are present at this meeting, with Councillor Hart attending online as per our governance rules. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, please? Thank you. Councillors, I propose that we move to confirm the minutes of the Submissions Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 16th of November 2022. Do I have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Hanson, and seconder, Councillor Finnegan. Is it to be opposed? Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Question, Mayor. Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, of course.
Without checking, I think we just need to check who was at that meeting to make sure that it's moved by a councillor who was actually present at that meeting. I recall there were 2 councillors absent.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Councillor Hanson was there, and her recollection is that she was as well. And although Councillor Finnegan wasn't, he's entitled to move it, I think. But thanks for raising that point. Yep. Thank you. Councillors, I'll put the minutes to the vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hart, you got another question?
Can we have a look at the draft and the unconfirmed minutes, please? I'm just trying to get them up.
Righto.
According to the draft that I have, it says that Councillor Hanson was an apology. Perhaps I'm looking at the wrong document, but could we at least have a look at that, please?
Yes, you're right, Councillor Hart. I did have something on representing council in Colac on that day.
That's fine, but Mayor, I'm happy to be the mover of the minutes just to make sure everything's done exactly right.
Yeah, thank you, and it needs to be, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Councillor Hart. And we'll stick with Councillor Finnegan as the seconder. And I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried 7-0. Thanks for that work, Councillor Hart. Verbal submissions for those applicants and objectors who have confirmed in writing that they wish to speak to their submissions will be heard prior to the consideration of the agenda item. A limit of 5 minutes will apply to each submitter. We will now move to item 9.1, Hall Street Cressy Part Road closure submissions report. The purpose of this item is to provide a report to council and hear the verbal submissions received in response to the notice of intention to close road part Hall Street Cressy. The following submitters have requested they be heard in support of their submissions. David and Diane Fillerton that are present, Paul Lamont and Ashley Nelson, and I don't see either of those gentlemen in the gallery. So, David and Diane, who's going to speak? Are you both making a submission?
Thank you. We're both going to speak. Mr. Chairperson, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak in this forum today. We support the partial closure of the road in question. We are the owners of 5 Wall Street, Cressy, the historic property known as the Frenchman's Inn, which was, of course, a former hotel. A little bit of background here. We purchased the establishment in 2017, and no one said that it was a good idea. Both the building and the site were in a perilous state of neglect. There were no floors in some areas, the laths were exposed to the elements, and everywhere there were leaks. There was rampant boxthorn on the site. In fact, there was a field of it. However, this was not our first rodeo. We're experienced renovators, especially with heritage hotels. We bought the Frenchman's Inn to develop a private residence in our retirement and create a beautiful garden which supports the historical context. We have, though, at this juncture, now preserved the building for the next 40 years so that it can be enjoyed by generations of all Victorians, all at our own expense. And I note that Council is fully aware of this and our efforts to improve the appearance of our town, Cressy. However, in respect to the landscaping of the site, there is still much to be done. It could and should be better. After all, this is a site with a heritage overlay. Our submission, which I'm sure you've all read, highlights our experiences thus far in detailing some of the lighter moments of our tenure. And at one particular juncture, I found a woman trying to elbow her way into the hotel, and she insisted that she had a booking and would not be dissuaded. Anyway, it turns out that she had the wrong booking. She'd booked Cressy, Tasmania. So that's one of the lighter intrusions we've had into the space. However, we've had some more sinister episodes when polite refusal was met with threatening behaviour. But that's in my submission. I don't want to go into that. Let's cut now to the chase. The current road is on our title. I repeat, it's on our title. Number 2, the partial road closure will not A, impinge on the access of any other property, B, impede any view of the building and site from the reserve for the purpose of viewing. I believe that, some people like to take selfies there. C, impact negatively on the historical information walk in the town. In fact, we propose to enhance it with a comprehensive historical billboard which explains the building's evolution. Now, you're probably wondering how I know all this. Well, I was, in a past time, I was the head of humanities. I have a history degree. I love old buildings, and that's why I'm au fait with this. D, it won't result in any reduction in public access and usage due to the proximity of the parallel reserve. E, as the landscape has been cleared of invasive boxthorn, sensitive landscaping can only enhance the site for future generations. It follows, therefore, that there will be access for emergency vehicles, provision for them to turn around, and care taken so that no archways or overhanging branches would constitute a hazard or impediment to a fire truck, SES or ambulance. You know, we are not young people, so we want to make sure that people can access the building. F, it is absolute nonsense to suggest that this little strip of road is the only safe and legal place to ride on for leisure pursuits in Cressy. The road is no longer a destination. It should be partially abandoned. Our submission, whilst emphasising title, also contests that this is necessary for our privacy, security, safety, and the enjoyment of our property. Now, these are reasonable expectations, no matter where you live. In the past 6 years I've resided in Hall Street, I can honestly say that grain trucks have never been a feature, nor were they on my radar. They would not be welcome in a residential area where I have small grandchildren visiting, but perhaps enough said.
Sorry, Diane, you've got 5 minutes. I've given you a minute over. Can you start wrapping up and we'll hear from David?
Yes, look, I'll wrap up now then. Anyway, in sum, I believe that this is a little bit of a storm in a teacup, fed by social media, and a model which promotes A, issue, B, confusion, misinformation and confected outrage, and of course clicks. We see this model constantly employed today. And I'll hand over to David.
Just before you step away, Diane, do councillors have any questions? No, thank you. David.
Good afternoon. After 25 years of active service in the CFA, I must assure Council that I wouldn't contemplate anything that would put CFA crews or the public at increased risk. And I don't believe that this proposal to a part road closure will do that, and I'm pretty confident that the council officers who worked with us on this process would also take it as their professional responsibility to ensure the safety of the public. But I would like to reflect on the possibility of incidents that might occur. One is obviously a structural fire or an incident at our property, at our house. Look, if the area is closed off on the north side at Tennant Street, as we propose, with open access except for signage on the south side near Deverney Street, it would add fractions of a minute to the CFA's response time to get to our location. Once they were there, it would be business as normal. It would make absolutely no difference to their operation at the scene. In the case of a wildfire incident, which is more serious for the wider area, access to the low-lying creek areas around our property is very limited from the road, basically from the cemetery around to past the churches near our place, because of the topography of the land and the steep entrance to the area. If a fire truck wanted to go onto the low-lying creek area, they would go down beside the church on the extension of Dennis Street into the paddocks that way and operate down there in, say, a mopping up operation or something like that. If there was any requirement for a fire vehicle during an emergency to actually transit from Deverney Street to Tennant Street or vice versa, through that area, it's still quite accessible through our vacant block on the other side of the actual road easement, which is completely vacant. Modern vehicles are all-wheel drive vehicles. Even a two-wheel drive vehicle wouldn't have any trouble negotiating the shallow drain on the side of Tennant Street in the summer. So if council were to consider putting in an all-weather road on the actual road easement, i.e. a gravel track, I would trust that that would be subject to a public consultation process that the way this has, because I personally don't see the need. I would have grave concerns that any such gravel road in that area could turn into the same sort of drag strip as the back of Bridge Street at the rear of Deverney Street is occasionally used for by illegal go-karts and motorbikes and even registered vehicles who get out there dropping donuts and travelling on the gravel areas at such speed that they have occasionally even ran off the road into a drain and done damage to their vehicles. Any firefighting vehicle that did end up on our car park would have plenty of room to turn around. We're not closing it off with gates or fences or anything like that. Just on reflection, the sketch that was published shows the turnaround bay in Tennant Street as actually going over the drop-off area at the side of the road, and if you were to persist with building it there, it will cost you a lot more in fill than it would if you shifted it back, say, 20 metres to the east to utilise the high area of the road and the road side that's there. You still would access the entrance track to 5 Tennant Street diagonally opposite. So, you know, that's my rebuttal of any need for a road, I hope, and a fire truck access. Thank you.
Thank you. You happy to take questions from councillors if there are any? David?
Look, I'm sorry, my ears are completely blocked. I can't understand what you're saying at all.
If councillors have a question of you, are you happy to take
I'm happy
questions?
to answer a question if I can hear it.
Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you for your question. Sorry, my microphone. Your time. You going to work? No. Sorry, just flashing out mid.
No, I'm sorry, I can't understand the questions.
Yeah, no, I'm just swapping microphones.
It's my fault. We're doing treatment on my ears.
It's certainly not your fault. We're just having an equipment malfunction. This happens from time to time. I appreciate your submission here today. I just thought I'd question, obviously, and I note the submission from the CFA captain from Crossy, who has spoken against, who has made a submission against the closure. And I guess I'd just ask you to go into more detail around why you would think that, why you would think that the Cressy CFA captain has, is not in support of the closure of this road.
Look, we really don't know because we haven't read his submission. We were frankly quite dismayed by the fact that he brought it up because David has spent 25 years working with the CFA as a volunteer and we were amazed that someone would question the safety of crews and public safety. We know that this is a fire area. We've lived in fire areas before and we've actually experienced this. So we were fairly bemused, shall we say, by this particular question. And the other thing is, interestingly enough, no one ever approached us. I volunteered at one stage to go and speak to the local history group about the closure, and no one ever got back to us. The CFA has certainly not approached us, you know, and in light of our service, we find this a bit perplexing.
May I?
Yeah, one more then, Councillor Hart.
I'd just like to say, given the call for submissions, you know, there was a call for submissions on this, and that's what this submissions committee is about. Submissions committee meeting's about, and obviously there have been a number of submissions from the Cressy and District Historical Group, a few residents as well as the CFA captain. And I'd just like to ask, in relation, and I'm certainly not questioning your service within the CFA, but has it been locally or elsewhere? And are you ingrained with the CFA community within Cressy? And, you know, why do you think they would be, the CFA captain in Cressy would be so aghast at the idea of closing this street if...
Well, I'm not clairvoyant. I can't say because they've never spoken to us. But we have had extensive experience with fire. We've had 2 farms, so we know about fire safety. We were involved with fire. I'm actually a Colac girl, so I know fire in this area. I experienced fire as a child. So David's service was in Hamilton and the Wimmera, but, you know, I worked with students, for instance, who volunteered as, you know, preparing kids to be members of the CFA when I taught. So I'm perfectly aware of the protocols of fire safety. And I think that fire is capricious, but, you know, I think that it pertains to all areas, really. So I've got no idea. It's very unfortunate that the fire captain did not approach us.
Thank you. Councillor Hart, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for your submission today. I appreciate you coming in. I'm sorry that I couldn't attend today's meeting in person. My understanding of your submission is you don't think it's necessary to have to construct an alternative road, if you like, along the easement. In other words, you don't need the loop in the area, that it could be a single access road. Is that a correct understanding? And the other question I have is, I understand from what you've said, that you've never actually seen the submissions that have been made. Have you only seen the reference that's in the agenda? Is that all that has been provided to you? Is that a correct understanding?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
And sorry, Diana.
Sorry,
Can I
in both respects.
Is it right if I just add one comment?
Yeah, and can you, Councillor Hart asked 2 questions. The first one was, I'll get him to repeat it so he can answer it directly.
Well, my comment simply was that of all the objections that were received, the only one that would stack up in VCAT was the fire issue. And I've tried to dispute the fact that anything that is being done is going to increase the danger to either the community or CFA crews. It was put forward by the captain of the local fire brigade, who also indicated he was going to come and speak to it, but he's not here, so he can't represent himself.
Thank you. Councillor Hart, did you want to ask your first question again, if you're still seeking an answer?
Yeah, I just want us to all be clear on this. So my question, Mayor, is that I'm understanding that you don't think it's necessary to construct a connecting road so that there's still that loop there. Is that a correct understanding?
As I say, it's a nice quiet corner of the planet, and I would much rather it stay that way. I don't think it's necessary to construct a road, because the only people who might, under some circumstance, conceivably wish to travel from Deverney Street through to Tennant Street in that area is an emergency vehicle, like a CFA emergency vehicle in a wildfire incident. And in that situation, they have every right to cut a fence and transit private property. There is absolutely no restriction on where they can go. Now, while that block across the other side of the easement remains vacant, and it's our block, we don't intend to build on it, while it remains vacant, they have perfect means of access across that area, quite safely. There's even a gateway that can be left open on one end, and there's no fence on the other end. So there's no problem. The public don't need to travel through there. The easement will provide plenty of access for tourists who can pull up in the Hall Street to the south of our actual property and walk around the area to have a look at the building if they so wish. Okay, does that answer your question? Whoever it was?
Yeah, that's quite clear. Thank you for taking the time to go through that.
Oh, over there. No wonder I couldn't see who it was.
Thanks very much. No other questions? Councillors, do we have any questions of officers? Max, Councillor Arnott, apologise.
Thank you, Chairman. Chris. Look, just to clarify, there's an image on page 10 of 12 of the agenda, and where it's got Deverney Street, Hall Street, Tennant Street, the boundary of the property, which I assume is in pink. And it's got the loops that Councillor Hart was just talking about on either end of Hall Street and Tennant Street. But then there's that piece in between, that Hall Street. Is that intended to be a future street, where the word Hall Street is written across that browned out area?
At the moment, it's not intended to be a road, but it's intended that be the road reserve.
That would be the road reserve. So if a road were to be made available, that would be where it would be built.
Yep.
Okay, so I was just trying to quantify that with what the comments were before, because there's no block of land at the end of that or anything like that. There's nothing to prevent that from occurring.
No.
Okay, so what we're actually talking about is a realignment of Hall Street rather than really a closure. So we've got, my understanding from looking at this drawing is that Hall Street by default happened to pass directly in front of what was the hotel, maybe for convenience of access to the hotel or whatever, over the private land of that hotel area, rather than following the actual original road reserve, I would imagine. So what we're looking to do is to close off what has become a common road by community use and revert back to what is actually the road reserve, Hall Street. Is that correct?
That's right.
So we're really not closing any road at all by per se. We're just closing the common use of a piece of land that has been considered a road.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Finnegan.
And just a question regarding the road reserve that is there. I do see a number of trees in the way, and I'm just wondering if there are any concerns if we were to, in future, want to, if we go through the closure of the current alignment of Hall Street, which is via the property in question, and were to go look at opening up the reserve all the way through. I see some trees there and they look to be quite large. Would there be any concerns around heritage or anything like that if we were to?
Not that we're aware of, no.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Just a quick one. Is it the intention to pave and make those loop turnarounds more usable?
Sorry, more usable. Yeah, so they're an indication of what can be constructed, and we can work with the engineering team to make sure that those loops can be made to accommodate whatever's required, so garbage truck turning around, whatever it may be. That's just an indication of where they would sit.
Any other questions? Councillor Costin.
So Hall Street, where the words Hall Street are on that map, that's an existing road reserve. Okay, and we are proposing to close that or leave it as an easement
To leave it as an easement
for vehicle access.
for, yeah, vehicle, pedestrian, all sorts of access.
Why are we only proposing a court then and not pavement for the full length of Hall Street?
That was looked at and priced, and I think it was around 200.
The estimate was about $250,000 to actually do that. So the thought process was to put those roundabout or cul-de-sacs, whatever you want to call them, in there, and the road reserve remains, and that would still provide access, if need be, for emergency vehicles through the road access. Road reserve, sorry.
Okay. Did you mean $250,000 more than the court bowl?
Correct.
Yeah.
That was the estimate from our road engineers.
And would there be any pavement at all through that, what's proposed as an easement? Any strengthening so a fire truck could get through there?
No. Not at the moment, no.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Finnegan.
Sorry, just one final one. So would it be open to us to consider, obviously, considering the road reserve for Hall Street there, if we were to vote to... sorry? I know, well, obviously hearing the submissions, but in future, would there be anything stopping us sort of chopping down the trees that exist there and turning that into a proper roadway, whether that be just an informal sort of thing? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Thanks, Councillor Hanson, for that advice. Councillors, the officers provide a recommendation with a report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Is there a seconder? Councillor White. Is it to be opposed? Thank you. Councillor Hanson, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody who's made a submission today, and also people who have made written submissions. I think we were going to hear, there was somebody else listed to make a verbal submission today, but circumstances can change, and sometimes it can be hard to turn up to these things, but we have their written submission, and we have written submissions and verbal submissions today. Councillors will ponder on those submissions. I'm sure if councillors have further questions, they can ask questions of officers, and council will take on board everything that they've heard and everything that's been submitted and make a decision at a future council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White, did you wish to speak? No, thank you. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That is carried 7-0. Councillors, that concludes the submissions hearing for today. Thank you to David and Diane. Thanks, officers.